Hello, my name is Jared Ludlow, Publications Director at the BYU Religious Studies Center, your weekly resource for gospel scholarship. And today I'd like to share some possible resources that can accompany your Come Follow Me reading for June 24th through 30th, Alma chapters 13 through 16. The first is called When Less is More, the Reticent Narrator in the Story of Alma and Amulek. It comes from Charles Swift, retired religion faculty member from BYU, and was published in a Religious Educator article. And in this, he points out that the Book of Mormon is full of things that are not there, from such cultural details as what Nephite cities look like to the far more personal emotions, doubts, and questions. Of course, the book does offer detail at times, but often information is left out at the moment in the narrative when readers are the most curious about what happened. The text frequently shows signs of having been carefully crafted, the narrator picking and choosing what should be said and what is best left to our imaginations. So Professor Swift quotes from Robert Alter, a well-known biblical scholar on biblical narrative, who talks about the art of reticence of biblical narrators. And here's what he says. All the indicators of nuanced individuality to which the Western literary tradition has accustomed us, preeminently in the novel but ultimately going back to the Greek epics and romances, would appear to be absent from the Bible. Though biblical narrative is often silent, where later modes of fiction will choose to be loquacious, it is selectively silent in a purposeful way. And so Charles Swift points out that if the narrator had made clear exactly what Amulek was referring to when he said he had been a wicked man, then perhaps fewer readers would see themselves in him. But since we really do not know how far Amulek had gone in being unrighteous, the narrator leads us to ask questions of ourselves. We reflect on how well we have heard the voice of the Lord, on how hesitant we may sometimes be to admit that we know what we know. These verses tell us something about Amulek, but they invite us to learn much more about ourselves. And here's his conclusion. The story of Alma and Amulek is one of the most poignant in all of Scripture. What begins as a joyful story of an angel directing a man to receive a prophet, and the two of them becoming missionaries who get to preach the gospel, ends with the horrible death of innocent women and children, and Amulek's having lost everything. Much of the joy and pain are not directly portrayed in the narrative, however, leaving us, the readers, to experience both as we study the text and imagine what is between the lines. It is no wonder that this story ends with one of the most touching sentences in the Book of Mormon about the love between two friends. Quote, Now as I said, Alma having seen all these things, therefore he took Amulek, and came over to the land of Zarahemla, and took him to his own house, and did minister unto him in his tribulations, and strengthened him in the Lord. And of course, we are left to wonder just how Alma ministered to Amulek and strengthened him in the Lord. The second article is called To Them Gave He Power to Become. It's by Daniel Belknap, an ancient scripture faculty member at BYU, and comes from a volume the RSC published, one of our Easter Conference volumes called My Redeemer Lives. And while it focuses a little bit on John, the Gospel of John's teachings, he does have a section where he talks about Zeezrom and his transformation. So here's some points he makes. One of Christ's roles is as a deliverer of knowledge concerning who we are and what we are to become. Knowledge that is just as necessary to our salvation as the overcoming of death. And there are three things one must know to experience the transformation through Christ described by the Apostle John and others. 1, what it means to be a son or daughter of God. 2, that such a designation is indeed possible to achieve. And 3, how Christ in his sacrifice made this possible to acquire. So talking specifically about Zeezrom, he says, Alma responds to Zeezrom's plea to be healed with a question. Believest thou in the power of Christ unto salvation? Though nothing in this query addresses Zeezrom's physical state, the question begins the healing process by suggesting that Christ can deliver him from his frenzied mind. This in turn empowers Zeezrom to make the changes necessary for his healing. Just accepting the possibility that healing can occur releases Zeezrom from the negative feedback and makes his deliverance possible. And here's part of his conclusion. Christ's atonement gave Zeezrom the power to transform, not just by effecting the transformation, but also by empowering Zeezrom with the knowledge that such transformation can occur. Thus, the power of the atonement not only transforms us physically, but also changes the very way we perceive ourselves and the world around us. This may have been what Christ meant when he said he came that we might have life more abundantly.